read somewhere that maybe I don't know if this is true, but there was a musical number in the movie.
Yeah. There was, he's not kidding. There was a giant musical number around the time that he was learning from Rumsfeld, and it was with Brittany Howard from the Alabama Shakes, and it was a huge dance number, and it was all about you just got to do what you got to do to win the game.
Please join me in welcoming the writer and director of Vice and The Big Short and Step Brothers, one of the greatest movies ever made, Adam McKay. There's so many things I want to ask you about this movie, but the first thing that comes to mind after watching it again tonight is, obviously there's so many people this is, really based on. I'm curious if you've heard from any of them or met any of the people who are actually featured in this movie and what their response was.
Well, one of the awkward things about the movie is that I'm actually, for 20 years now, pretty close with Donald Rumsfeld. We hang out a lot. And so we were in Vegas about 6 months ago, Rummy and I call him Rummy, and he's like, "You're really gonna do this?" No, I don't know any of them. The only story I heard was I have some friends who know a reporter who was with the Cheneys and said, "Have you not seen the trailer?" And they were like, "No," and showed them the trailer. And apparently they laughed really hard. They liked it a lot. But if you see the trailer, it makes sense. It makes Dick Cheney look like he's the coolest guy in the world. And Cheney's comment was, well, that movie about that fish lady can win, maybe this can win. That was his comment. For real, that is true. Yeah.
But, okay, you were telling me before that at the premiere for this movie you met someone who's in it, right?
Well, this is really strange. So we finished the premiere and I walk out, you're saying hi to 1,000 people, and someone hits me on the shoulder, and I turn and there's a guy there, kind of portly, shorter guy. He's like, "I'm Frank Luntz." And I'm like, "Oh, Jesus." And I can tell right away it's Frank Luntz. And he goes, "You know what's crazy? That death tax moment, I really did do a double thumbs up." I swear to God, this is actually totally true. And there was like a pause between us, and I just said, "That's awful." And he was like, "Yeah, whatever." And I was like, really the work you did on global warming is like really the thing that like you have a talent, you should reverse that, and really do work against that. And he was kind of like, "Yeah, maybe. Anyway, it's good to see you." Like you could tell he had no comprehension of the impact of his work. But I love the fact that we have the actor in the movie do the double thumbs up, and Luntz actually did that. It's just amazing.
Well, the interesting thing about a movie is I do feel like the way you present everything, it is a movie that somebody could like, even if it's completely what you're against. And I'm curious for you, what the starting point was for all of this. What made you want to make a movie about Dick Cheney? When did you decide you were going to do it? What appealed to you about him?
Well, I had finished, we had finished The Big Short, and it was like March, so we had done the whole movie, the kind of award stuff, and then of course, as your body does, I got really sick. My body was finally like, "Oh great, we can finally have the flu." And so I was kind of laid out, and also in those moments, I think we've all done this, you look at your bookshelf, and you look at like the books people have given you, and you're like, "All right, what am I gonna read?" And a friend of mine, a writer in town, Cindy Campanera, had given me a book about Cheney like 8 months before. So I just pulled it out and started reading it. And what dawned on me was like, wow, the door of history, at least for this period, is about to close on this guy. Like, all the books have been written about him. We've talked about him. There's clearly no investigation into what they did. And that's it. This is the end of the Cheney chapter. And then in the middle of that run, there was a TMZ video, I'm not kidding, of Cheney in an SUV, and a TMZ paparazzi went up to him and was like, "Hey, Dick," and he was like, "Hey," and they were kind of laughing with each other. I was like, this is fucking weird, man. Like, they're treating him like he's Tom Bosley or Conrad Bain, and the guy killed nearly 1 million people. Like, this is very strange. And so it just hit me, like the iris out of history is about to hit Dick Cheney, and that's it. He's walking away from all of this. And then I just got intrigued, and I started ordering books off Amazon, and I read everything. I read, Jane Mayer, I read Ron Suska, I mean, every Barton Gellman, every writer you can imagine. And then I went to the articles, and the deeper I was digging, I was just blown away by the degree to which this guy understood Washington, D.C. and the levers of power. And then I was also blown away by the fact that Lynn Cheney is really kind of Dick Cheney. I mean, she's really the wind in the sails of Dick Cheney. And then that betrayal of the daughter in the end, I was like, it's kind of an American tragedy. I mean, this guy, more than anyone you could name, is kind of the face of the modern Republican Party. And I think back to your point about why some Republicans have no problem with it is because they won. They did it. They pulled it off. I mean, the Reagan Revolution worked. They figured out messaging. We show it in the movie. Those right-wing think tanks, the death tax, all that stuff worked really, really well. To the point where even the Democrats, like Bill Clinton and to some degree Obama, they would push them to the right. And so yeah, I've always said, if you're a Republican and you watch this movie, why would you have a problem with it? So yeah, that was the moment though when I really started hitting me. I was about 4 or 5 books in, and I was like, this is crazy. And knowing that we were about to end our discussion, like clearly Obama did not investigate, the war crimes during this period. And I understand why not. I mean, politically there's no benefit, but I just thought this is nuts that this guy can just, and John Yoo, the torture lawyer, teachers at Berkeley, and all these people are just like, hey, what's up? Like, eating hot dogs and walking around, and like, it really reminded me of the movie, one of my favorite movies ever, The Act of Killing. It is a great, great movie, and it just kept making me think of that, and like the idea that like you can get through this, you can do these horrors. And then the next question was, who the hell is this guy? Where did he come from? How do you do these things and just motor on with your life? And once I dug into that, I realized there was an American story there.
Well, and how did you get into that? Because he's so secretive. I mean, who were some of your, did you have sources other than the books and the articles, and what kind of other research did you do?
We did. I mean, we read everything out there. I compared it to radio telescopy, where it's like, there are just certain things you're never going to know about Dick Cheney. He will never give you any emotion. Like, his biography is the most boring thing you have ever read. It's like instructions on how to put together a Cuisinart. I mean, and so you really have to triangulate everything. And so that's what we did. We dug in, and the key was that we had a journalist that was working with us who went and interviewed dozens of people off the record. Yeah, we had to do it off the record. So we would kind of figure stuff out through all the great writing of all these amazing journalists. God bless journalists. So many. It's really true. I mean, without them, without these people really like kind of tracking this guy down, who everyone knew was secretive, there's no way we even get to where we were here. So we were doing all of that. We were drawing kind of assumptions. I was like, well, it had to be this. And then our reporter went out and spoke to people off the record, and we started hearing, like, if anything, we're being conservative. Like, that was the response we got from the people he was talking to. So that was amazing to hear the real truth. One of the biggest things we heard from our journalist was that everyone in Casper, Wyoming, to this day, still says, no matter who Lynn Cheney Vincent would have married, they would have been president or vice president, that it was her. And that was also a hard thing with this script, too, the fact that the first act really isn't Dick Cheney's first act, it's Lynn Cheney's first act. And, you can look at Sid Field and McKay, and you can say that just breaks every rule there is. And I had friends of mine saying, you gotta make it Cheney's first act. I'm like, it's not. It's Lynn's first act. She's the one who, they're kind of one and the same. So, yeah, those interviews were hugely important to putting this movie together.
Well, speaking of breaking storytelling rules, I love this new form of kind of journalistic comedy you've created with this in Big Short, where you're dealing with things that are, generally historically accurate, but you're breaking the fourth wall. You have things like Alfred Molina coming in, you have the thing that halfway through all of a sudden the end credits start, all that kind of stuff. And I'm curious how difficult it is, like what's the sort of trial and error figuring out which of those things work and when you're going too far with the self-consciousness, because it seems to me like it must be a really difficult balance to strike.
Well, this movie was really, really hard because you have these incredible grounded performances. I think the center of this movie are the performances. I think it's a character study first and foremost. I think that's what movies can do that books can't do, documentaries can't do, and I think that's why we made the movie. However, I really feel like there's a gulf between, and I'm kind of a blank slate in the sense that when I learn this stuff, I get very excited. Like, I didn't know that Roger Ailes worked in the Nixon White House and actually pitched conservative news. So when I read that, I was like, holy shit. And I run out of the room and I tell my wife, did you know this? And she's like, hey, whatever, like we're doing this stuff. So I get very excited about this stuff. And my theory is that the techniques of pop culture, the techniques of presentation with big graphics and funny things are used a lot of the time to sell us products. They're used to get us excited about things that are really not important. And so our idea is like when I, as a kind of, in my office as a sweaty geek, get excited about something, I'm like, fuck it, I'm gonna use that. And the Alfred Molina thing is a great example. I mean, if I had shown that in documents or had a lawyer, it would have been a snooze, but when you really hear that list of stuff they did, it's unbelievable. And I think it's perfectly legit to have Alfred Molina, one of the most charming actors ever, read it as something that we all love, a menu. And so that all comes from my kind of geeky enthusiasm when I'm discovering it. Like once I saw that list and I talked to a bunch of lawyers, I'm like, is this real? And they're like, oh yeah. I was like, holy shit, and you want to kind of pump it with that excitement.
Well, I'm also curious, you have that great focus group scene in the movie, and I'm curious, in terms of this movie, did you test screen it, did you focus group it, and what did you learn from that? I mean, how did they respond to some of the sort of, crazier narrative devices like the end credits staying in the middle? I mean, did people actually respond to that, or did they tweak it?
Yeah, I mean, one of the things about this movie was there's two different ways you could go. You could just say, screw the audience, we're going to cut the story together. But I really didn't want that kind of movie. I wanted it to engage and really engage the audience. So we did test screen it. Oddly, the fake ending, people loved it. I mean, that was never, ever a problem. I mean, maybe early on, but from that point on, everyone was cool with it. There were certain tricky areas. I think one of the tough things was, there's this natural inclination that you're like, get to older Cheney, I want to see the Iraq War. But we really felt like you got to see him become, start to get the taste for power in his mouth. And those Rumsfeld scenes are so important. And we felt like the Reagan Revolution was so important. So you try and balance it with an audience. You try and be like, okay, I get it, we've lost the energy, let me fix that. But at the same time, this is happening, too bad. and so you kind of like get this balance between the two that goes on. And the test screenings were incredibly helpful.
And were there things that you liked that you had to lose? Like I read somewhere, maybe I don't know if this is true, but there was a musical number in the movie?
Yeah. There was, he's not kidding. There was a giant musical number around the time that he was learning from Rumsfeld, and it was with Brittany Howard from the Alabama Shakes, and it was a huge dance number, and it was all about you just got to do what you got to do to win the game, and it just didn't work. It was like we put it in, and it was like, honestly, it became a choice between the moment of him hearing about bombing Cambodia or the musical number, and I felt like the bombing Cambodia gave you that taste of power and weight more than the musical number. So we'll release it. It'll be as an extra scene when the movie comes out, and it's incredible. It's incredible. I mean, you have Greg Fraser, one of the best DPs on the planet, Nick Britell, one of the best composers, Brittany Howard. It is spectacular, but like in the flow of the story, it did not work.
writing a movie like this just seems to me like it must be such a monumental undertaking. And I guess I'm curious, you mentioned all the books you were reading, the journals you read. At what point do you actually sit down at the computer or the typewriter and start writing? And do you start that in the midst of the research? Do you get all the research in your head first? How do you approach that?
It kind of comes out where you're reading, I was about 5-6 books in, and then you're kind of recycling, and you're constantly rereading the books as you're doing it, and you're constantly reading articles. And about 5-6 books in, I started to have a shape. So that was like the rough outline. And so the research and the outline kind of went hand in hand. So that was it. It was research and outline were kind of the same thing. It took like 8 months. I mean, it was, I've never done a movie like this. With The Big Short, we had Michael Lewis's book, and then I still had extra economists that I was talking to, like Adam Davidson and other people, which helped a lot. But with this movie, there was a lot of great books and a lot of great journalism, but they were mostly about little pieces of Cheney's life. There was not really that book out there that did the whole sweep. And so, I realized early on we had to put it together on our own using these books. And it was tricky, but it was fun. I mean, we were definitely into it. I mean, there was this moment, like I said, where you just realize the door of history is about to close on this guy. And I realized, what do I really know about him? He shot a guy in the face. They jokingly called him Darth Vader. We think he pulled the puppet strings. And nearly 1 million people died in Iraq. Like, he broke the Geneva Convention. The world economy collapsed. He outed a CIA spy, and on and on and on. And we're about to let this pass. I mean, it was an incredible, weird moment in my office where I was like, I so much would have rather done, the new Spider-Man movie. Which I was offered. I mean, it was like, there was a moment where they were like, hey, you want to do that? I was like, oh, that sounds fun. And instead I'm in my office working on Dick Cheney. I'm like, shit, man. But then once you're into it, you get crazy about it. And then I started realizing this guy's one of the, weight-bearing beams of American history. He really, truly is. It's amazing.
Well, and the whole unitary executive thing obviously has a lot of relevance now. And I think, if I've got my timing right, you would have been in pre-production on this movie when Donald Trump was elected president in 2016. And I'm curious, did you see that coming, and how did it affect how you saw or approached this movie, if at all?
We were actually in New York City. We were scouting, doing tech scouting for a TV show we did for HBO called Succession, which was thank you. And I directed the pilot, and I was with Robin Woolley, my EP, who's here somewhere. And no, oh my God, no one saw it coming. I remember that night we were hanging out with Alex Gibney, the documentarian, and a bunch of other friends. And we had bottles of champagne because I'm like, hey, I don't love everything about Hillary, but like, we're about to have our first woman president. This is awesome. And so we had bottles of champagne. We all got together. And then our Frank Rich, who's a producer on the show, called and said, nah, it's not happening. We were like, excuse me? And so the night ended with like the TV off and us passing like a bottle of whiskey around in a circle. And the next day on the Tech Scout, like a quarter of our crew was like crying. And we realized like, actually, we were already planning Vice, and we said, actually, it's even more relevant now because, and it's kind of happened. We realized that like with our 24-hour news cycle, it would just, in everyone's mind, it would just seem like it's all about Trump, Trump, Trump. And it's like, no, this has been a 40, 50-year story. This is not just Trump, the orange reality star. This is a much bigger story. So after that, we were more committed to the movie.
Yeah, and I feel like the movie gets that across so clearly and concisely. And one of the things that I think works really well is your use of the Jesse Plemons character as a narrator. And I'm curious where that idea came from, because it's really a masterstroke.
Yeah, that was early on, just incredible to me that this is a guy who should have died 5 different times. And in the end, like, somehow at the last moment jumps the donor list and like gets this fresh, amazing heart. And then when I read that Chaney really was saying he doesn't consider it someone else's heart, he considers it his new heart, I was like, all right, that's the end. And yeah, that was very early on. There were about 4 moves right from the beginning. The other one was him and Lynn sort of, in a way, betraying Mary. That was another one that just really struck me, because everything about what you read about Chaney for the first 40, 50 years of his life was all about family. Like, he did all the cooking, he did the shopping. The people we talked to and around his life were like, he loves those daughters, he loves Lynn. And then when you read that, you're like, wow, man. And then some people are like, well, you don't know if it was him. It's like, no, like 2 days later, they published an op-ed saying, or they released a statement saying they back Liz. And what we've heard is that Lynn will still, Mary will still have dinner with Dick and Lynn on Sunday nights. She'll come with her wife and her kids, but it's understood that Liz will never be there to this day. We put in the movie that, Mary said, I don't have to answer that question, because knowing the Cheneys, we would have released the movie and then you would have seen Mary and Liz together right away. So we played it a bit conservative, but it was just so heartbreaking to me. I mean, this was always the center of this guy, and you can say whatever about him for like decades, but and the idea that wedge issue that they used to get to power is what wrecked his family. It just was unbelievable when I was reading. It was such a Greek tragedy.
Well, it's interesting you brought up the act of killings. The movie that I kept thinking of watching this again tonight was Godfather 2 for that very reason. And I'm curious if you had that movie or any other movies on your mind. What were some of the films that you had in mind as like references or touchstones?
100% Godfather 2. About halfway through the edit process, I came into my editor, Hank Corwin. I said, this movie is Godfather 2. And I watched it like 2 or 3 times. And you look at Michael Corleone, he's a straight up sociopath. He's awful. Like when he closes that door on Diane Keaton's face with his kids behind him. And that whole movie is a shifting between Vito Corleone loving his family and then Michael Corleone being like dead-eyed. And what I loved about it was they never explain how Michael Corleone became a sociopath. They never get into it, it just kind of is. And that was a big movie, huge influence on us. We looked at that a bunch. The other movie we really looked at a lot was Sid and Nancy by Alex Cox. Honest to God, that was a movie we watched a lot. And that was a movie about just a regular guy, in a way, Sid Vicious, who fell in love with Nancy, who was a heroin addict. And if you're gonna fall in love with a heroin addict, you're gonna do some heroin. And God bless Lynn Chaney, Lynn Vincent. She's whip smart, ambitious, beautiful, everything about her. But she was into power, and if you're going to be with her, you better be into power. And as it turned out, Dick Cheney was better than everyone around him. He was better than Lynn. He was better than Rumsfeld. I mean, there was no one better than him.
Well, I've always thought Cheney was kind of a sociopath, and yet in this movie, Christian Bale's performance really, made me connect to him in a way. And what Bale does in this movie almost goes beyond acting to cloning or something. I mean, he is so exactly like him, and yet, a million years before this, I would never have thought, Christian Bale was the obvious choice for Dick Cheney. I'm curious, at what point did you think of him, and what was his response when you approached him with it?
Yeah, I mean, to me, the entire movie, what movies can do that books and documentaries sometimes can't do, is we can do a character portrait. So that's what the movie is. I mean, that's what we're trying to add to the discussion of Dick Cheney. And to me, the entire movie hinged on having an actor play Dick Cheney that you just had to see what he would do with it. An actor who's not going to just play him, an actor who's going to research him, who's going to break him down psychologically, who's going to go deeper than anyone could ever go. And that's Christian Bale. And I didn't care about the physical appearance. I really didn't. I just wanted to see what he would do psychologically with him, how he would reinterpret him. And then pretty quickly we realized, Lynn Chaney is every bit as important, if not more so. And then when you get to that point, you're like Amy Adams. I mean, Amy Adams is, I think she was born in Italy, but I think she was mostly raised in Colorado. She's a total heartland woman who was raised in that part of America. So it really became about those two. To answer your question, when I told Bale, he straight up just said, "Are you fucking crazy. I mean, and then he knew it. He knew it right away. I was like, Christian, it's all internal. None of it's external. There's no markers. This guy doesn't want us to play him in a movie. Dick Cheney, the last thing Dick Cheney wants is for him to be seen in a movie. You could just see Christian be like, shit, I gotta do this. You know?
Well, the one thing that's kind of undeniable for that movie, I mean, you and I were talking earlier about the fact that it's kind of polarizing, but the performances just across the board are great. And I'm curious, as far as the way you direct actors, is it any different on a movie like this than on one of your comedies, where I know you take a very improvisational approach and you're throwing out lines to people? I mean, are you still able to do that on a movie like this? It's based on a true story, or do you have to modify your approach?
Yeah, absolutely, and we have that in The Big Short as well, where hopefully we've done enough research that we know what we're yelling out. There's a great example in the movie when, after they convince Colin Powell to give that terrible speech in front of the UN that's just totally false and full of lies, we cut to the family having dinner. It's one of my favorite moments in the movie, actually. And that's all improvised. That's like, I just told them what to talk about. I just said, okay, American Idol was big, this was going on, and I told each character what to riff with, but other than that, it was totally improvised. So it's a different kind of improv. When you're doing like laugh-driven comedy, you're constantly attacking the scene. And with those kinds of movies, like after Step Brothers, I would go home and I would be physically tired. Like my muscles would be sore from both laughing and the focus of trying to think of jokes. With this and with The Big Short, it was a little more relaxed because it's character-based, and you have actors that are doing so much to bring so many details. So it is a little more relaxed, but always the last couple takes, I'll throw some stuff out. Why not? And then there are several times where Christian or Amy or Sam Rockwell or Tyler Perry would say, hey, can I do this? And of course, my answer is always yes. It's just film. We use it or we won't. So I'd say as far as the degree of improv, it's about half as much as the comedies. And it's a different kind of quality. It's not as attacking. It's a much more subtle. The set is quieter. Like when we were doing Step Brothers, we would like do takes, and then as soon as I said cut, the whole crew would crack up laughing, and they were like, "Oh my God!" Like that's clearly not happening on this. There's a much more relaxed vibe going on, which is nice. But occasionally we made the crew laugh.
Well, Step Brothers was, when it came out, not one of your best reviewed movies. It was actually kind of a polarizing movie. Now it's thought of as a classic. This movie is,
Yeah, it's actually, Step Brothers, I think, our worst reviewed movie of all the movies we've ever done. Like really crappy reviews.
Yeah. And this one kind of goes, all over the place. And people, like me, think it's fantastic. There are people who don't. And I'm curious, what has surprised you about the reaction? And do you in a way think it's a good thing to have a movie that gets polarized reaction like that?
I gotta be honest, I mean, we were, I edited this with Hank Corwin, and we knew it. We knew it was coming. Like, Jesus, look at the country we live in. Look at the story we're telling. Look at, it was a really challenging movie. So we knew that it was going to be polarizing. We weren't surprised by that. I mean, I think there was some surprise that, there were certain quarters of the world that were like kind of rankled by it. I was a little surprised to see some historians and scholars and left-wing journalists kind of go, hey, that's not correct. It's like, no, we know. We did the research. But that was small. I mean, for the most part, we felt like, yeah, we knew exactly what we were walking into. And if you do a movie, all of America is about the colors red and blue right now. And it's very sad because it should be about actions. It should be about effects. It should be about choices and holding people accountable and transparency, but it's not. It's about which color jersey you're wearing, and we knew that walking into it. So I gotta say, part of me loves it. I mean, part of me loves reading a review that's like, how dare he? This is the most disgusting thing I've ever seen. And then there's some other review, this is genius. Like, it's kind of ridiculous. And the same thing with Step Brothers. I mean, one of my all-time favorite reviews we've ever received was Roger Ebert's review of Step Brothers. If you have a chance, please read it. It basically reads like Richard Jenkins' character wrote the review. And I'm not kidding. And at one point, poor Roger Ebert, you can read in the review, he just says, "Sometimes I look around at the world and I don't know what's going on. I feel like this movie doesn't care about civilization." And like, Farrell and I love that review more than anything. We have it framed, and this one's gotten plenty of those too. Like, this isn't, Sid Field wouldn't like this. You can't stop a movie for credits. And there was one report we had that like the fake credits looked like a mistake. I'm having audience members walk out of the theater, and I was like, oh God, I love that. That is so good.
Well, we've got another movie to watch, so I gotta wrap it up here. But you want to say anything about The Big Short to introduce it?
Oh my God, you guys get to watch The Big Short. That is really fun. Wow. I don't know what to say about this one. We just had a blast making this. We were down in New Orleans. How about I tell you stuff around the movie? Which is we had to be really careful how much we indulged in New Orleans. So we had like strict rules. We were like only Friday nights. But then every Friday night we would be staggering home drunk. And then we would sleep in Saturday, get our shit together and go back. But man, these actors, the big thing with this movie is the actors, and Barry Ackroyd, the DP, oh my God, that guy's a legend. But the acting in this movie is just top to bottom, every day player, every main player, some of the best I've ever seen. So, and yeah, the weird thing is this movie harmonizes quite nicely with Vice. If you really look at the historical record of when lobbying exploded, in the early 70s there were only a couple thousand lobbyists in DC, and by the 80s it went up to like 200,000, and now it's like 400,000 or 500,000. And that was banking. A lot of that was banking. The money started rolling into DC, and with the Reagan Revolution, they were like, please give us the money. We'll deregulate whatever you want. And that kind of got the ball rolling. So the movies do harmonize, but enjoy. Yeah.
Well, thanks so much. Adam McKay,
Yeah.